Siomra
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sure Look, Sure Listen, the podcast that takes a pop.
Sure look, sure listen. Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Culture.
Oh, what an exciting Tuesday morning it is for the listeners of Sure Look, Sure Listen, the podcast that takes a pop at culture, or any other abortive catchphrase attempt you might be interested in. But sure, look, we've no time for self-reflection because we've loads of things to look at, including, speaking of people with no time for self-reflection, Ben has seen the Interview with the Vampire Season 2. That was fabulous. That was a fabulous vampire joke. And we've got a rake of trailers to look at, including the most exciting thing ever on Amazon, Secret Level. And we've got a trailer from the internet's favourite person, Rachel. We call her the Zeegs, Ben. That's what we call her on this podcast. We call her the Zeegs. Yeah. But Rachel Ziegler has a new movie called Y2K. Why indeed. And probably the most exciting thing of the entire year, we got an anime-style trailer of a Western adaptation, which is Ben's absolute favourite thing in the war for Rohirrim or the war of the Rohirrim?
Oh, who knows, Michael? Sure, listen.
What?
Getting the names of things wrong aside.
Yes, go on.
I think we're just freezing for fun, Michael. I think that was actually us, not the machine at all. I think we both just kind of froze. Very interesting.
Yeah, we're doing the bit. Yeah.
We're doing a bit. But sure, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if that wasn't enough, and it's not to keep this boat afloat, gang, it's not enough, we're going to do an absolutely classic episode of Sure Look, Sure Listen. Really the meat and potatoes of our entire podcasting model, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for a bloody Exhumed.
Oh, we're going to take an old film. We're going to go to the film cemetery, Ben, and we're going to go, ooh, it's nighttime, and we're in the film cemetery, and we're going to go, what films will we dig up and exhume? That's where the name comes from.
Yeah, very good. And now that we've butchered that, let's talk about a man who butchers vampires. We're looking at 1998's Blade.
Very good, starring the actor John Blade. But you look, Benjamin, before we talk about John Blade and his vendetta against vampires, do you think the listeners might be able to do us any favours? Do you think hold on, no, I've got a good one for this. Do you think the listeners might be able to dig us out of a hole? How'd you like that?
Ladies and gentlemen, we were dead and buried as a podcast many, many years ago, but you too could exhume our careers as podcasters and give us a review wherever you listen. You might be, Michael, listening to this on Spotify.
Yeah. Well, I'm not personally, because I'm actually on the podcast.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We would, otherwise we'd review ourselves all the time. But come here to me, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening on Spotify, there's a few things you can do. First of all, if you're a little bored of this episode, go down to the timestamps below on Spotify nonetheless and jump ahead in the podcast to something you'd find more interesting. Then go to rate this show and give us an 5-star review. I don't want your 4-star reviews. I don't want to be picky, but I just want 5s. That's what I want.
4-star reviews. That's actually one of the names we considered for this podcast was no time for 4-star reviews. Don't give them to us.
Very hard to fit on a single thumbnail for an episode. But ladies and gentlemen, you could also comment on this episode if you enjoyed it. Get involved. Get down there. Give us a comment. You might be listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. I don't know why. It seems a bit of a moot point at this stage to listen to things on Apple Podcasts of all things, Michael. Get out of town. How 90s. But give us a review nonetheless. We care. We check them every day. It's practically what our entire model of self-esteem is based on.
Yeah, that and flexing. Benjamin, speaking of men taking their shirt off and flexing though, did you watch any films this week?
I did. I took a look, Michael, at the seminal, and I think it's fair to say, Michael, seminal. I think we're on the money this time in saying that I took a look at the absolutely essential vampire film that is Blade.
Yeah, because it's full of semen.
Yeah, red, sticky, gooey semen.
Lovely, delicious. Who made Blade? Who made it? Who was in it? Who was in it and who made it? I don't remember.
So, Michael, the year is 1998, no less.
Oh, you were but a wee burn.
A wee burn, Michael. I was 7 years of age.
Oh, you shouldn't have been watching this.
No, and I wasn't, Michael. That's the good thing. I was not watching Blade at 7 years of age. But Michael, this has a bit of bar the director, Michael. This has a bit of a good cast for the time. It's very 90s. Let's put it that way.
It has the most 90s cast of any film not made in the 90s, but it was made in the 90s. So by definition, it has a 90s cast. If you think about it.
So
Think about it for a second.
with no other choice, Michael. But top billing for this was none other than young Weslington Snipes.
That's his real full name.
Yes, or Wezzers, as I'll be calling him for the rest of this podcast.
Yeah, he went to Blackrock College, didn't he?
He did, old Wezzers, who's out there on the left flank in the rugger.
Yeah.
That
When
sounds
he
right,
goes in
doesn't
and
it?
kills all
That's-
those vampires, all the rugger boys on the side saying Wezzers is absolutely sending it.
Yeah, Wezzers is fucking sending it. And Michael, if you were a vampire hunter, that might be what you'd say as you went through this. Second to share the billing there, Michael, is none other than 90s darling Stephen Dorff.
Stephen Dorff. Benjamin, he plays the character of Deacon Frost, the biggest man-baby protagonist I've ever seen in a film.
He's ridiculous, Michael. He's the most ridiculous antagonist I've ever seen on screen.
Did I say
Now, that's-
protagonist? I meant
You,
antagonist.
I mean, look, it is a bit of a twin narrative opposing thing,
yeah.
but we'll get into that on the
Yeah,
podcast.
I'm with the
Michael.
vampires. I'm with the vampires. So he is my protagonist. I'm with the stroppy man children.
We'll get onto that in a few minutes, Michael. Stephen Dorff is there. Chris Christopherson is in this film for some reason.
He's great.
He's there.
He's a
He's in it,
revelation.
yeah. He's fantastic. He's a real joy to watch, Michael.
Yeah.
And then we've got some other people there that are kind of important, but the most important cast member for me, Michael, and I think you'll agree, the most important cast member for me is good friend of the podcast and our friend Shane, Donald Logue.
Welcome to Ireland's leading Donald Logue fancast. Just 2 weeks ago, we covered Donald Logue's early TV show, The X-Files, and this week we're covering the film that Donald Logue absolutely steals, Blade.
He does, Michael. He does steal this film. This is the most screen time I've ever seen him given in a single thing. And I love
great.
it.
It's
I love
fantastic.
it.
Ben, if
Yeah,
I
it's-
remember correctly as well, there were also some women in it.
Yeah, there were, yeah. But I mean, does that... I'm only kidding, ladies and gentlemen. I got you. You were about to write in those comments down below. Maybe I should have let you for engagement. Who knows?
Just good old-fashioned
but-
rage bait.
Come here to me, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't know how to say this right, but I'm going to give it my best shot. It's in Bush Wright is her name.
You got the right bit right, anyway.
Yeah, and she's Karen Jensen. She's hematologist Karen Jensen.
It also stars Benjamin in a very brief role, in a kind of almost blink and you'll miss her. Also a bit of like 90s clickbait. It stars your favourite underage porn star, Tracy Lords.
I did no, absolutely not.
No, it
We're
does.
rolling that back. That's it. No, I know. We're rolling it back for a different reason, Michael.
No, she's definitely in it.
But yeah, so this, and I mean, in terms of the people that made it, Michael, Stephen Norrington, bless him, didn't do great after this, Michael.
Old
Stephen
Norries, we
Norrington,
call him.
yeah, old Norries, Wezzers and Norris, both in the horrors. But yeah, look, he struggled after this, Michael. He didn't really go anywhere after this, and
Oh, what a shame.
we've kind of just, let him have it, and he's gone off into that sunset,
It's kind of-
or sunrise if he's a vampire.
Oh, very good. Like Udo Kier in this.
Yeah, bizarre.
Benjamin, you could almost say that this film is so bombastic, and the performances by Wesley Snipes and Stephen Dorff and Chris Christopherson, although Chris Christopherson is pretty restrained, but the character himself is very memorable. But
Yes.
the plot is so silly, and the action is so absurd, and the characters are so over the top, you almost kind of forget someone directed this.
That would be one way of putting this. Yes. Yes, it would.
He definitely brought his blue filters with him that week, though, didn't he, Stephen Norrington?
This is what's so interesting to me, Michael. So one of the things that jumped out to me watching this, Theo Van de Sand is the name of the man who ran cinematography for this one. And this is pre-post-production color grading. So you would basically have to... Now, it's not very far pre it. It was creeping into the industry at the time. But you basically had to plan out what you wanted the vibe of your film to look like and bring that kind of tech to set. So you're absolutely right to say that there were blue light filters on those cameras. There were blue light setups here and there. They were all used very artfully to create that kind of nocturnal blue night feel to the entire film. And it's pretty impressive.
Which, god damn it, Benjamin, it set the colour palette for a generation of vampire nighttime films. Underworld, I, Frankenstein, all that entire generation of action horror just copies the cinematography of Blade.
Yeah, Queen of the Damned, so many, Michael. Like, it's insane. It was, after this film, the aesthetic of vampires to be in an MTV music video with water spray bottles on hand to make sure everyone looked suitably glistening and moist.
Yeah. Now, having said that, absolutely, this is not a great film.
It's not. It's not spectacular.
No, it's not an incredible film. It has some incredibly memorable characters and performances and some real set pieces. But the film itself is very by the book, very by the numbers, like late 90s action hero movie.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
an absolute belter of an opening sequence. One of the best superhero introductions ever put to film.
Yes. Without shadow of a doubt, Michael. So strong, so world building, so bloody.
Yes, bloody.
Just crystal clear in its vision for what it was going to do with vampires in this film. Fantastic. Fantastic.
And still the best 90s rave music in a film that there's ever been.
Yes. It genuinely felt like a dirty, dirty rave.
Yeah.
And I was
dirty,
impressed.
Dirty, underground, sexy vampire rave.
Because sometimes you see that and you look at it and you go, this is just a backlot on a film set. And they've gotten a young person in who's watched too many movies and they've said, what do young people do? And they're like, oh, I think they do this in a rave, or I think they do that. But this feels like a bunch of people tripping balls on Molly, as the kids would say, Michael, and having a great time. Only it's not Molly, it's blood.
It's human blood. Yeah, just as a comparison from like a similar era, any of the club scenes in The Matrix, or its slightly less salubrious follow-ups. Like, nah, this isn't real. This sweaty Zion sex party is just freaking me out. Not like that sexy vampire sweat party.
That also kind of freaked me out. I reckon I had nightmares for years after that, Michael. But like, it's pretty fucking solid as a film. Look, I think we should probably introduce, ladies and gentlemen, this is very exciting. You're going to be here for the introduction of a brand new little segment on Exhumed.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah. Does this hold up? That's what I'm going to ask you, Michael.
You're asking me that personally now, or is there some sort of lead into this?
No, there's no lead in. That's the question. That's the new segment. That's it right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, right? It's not good. It's not a good film.
Yeah.
It's not a good film. But the things about it which were good in 1998 are still good. So one thing that like really stands out about it is, and you're going to have to hop in here, Benjamin, the character of Blade. The character of Blade.
Yeah.
This depiction of Blade in this film, this kind of semi-stoic, prowling, like creature of the night that is sometimes just Wesley Snipes saying weird shit.
It's just Wesley Snipes.
This was not Blade. This is not who Blade was pre this movie. This is an entirely new take on Blade. And so iconic a take on Blade it is that it has now become Blade. The Blade before this, forget about him.
It just wipes it off the map, Michael. So, Blade as a comic book character is interesting in terms of representation and in terms of the popularity he gained very, very quickly. So, in the case of Blade, the comic book, He first debuted in The Tomb of Dracula number 10 in 1973. That was an anthology horror comic, Michael, back in the day for Marvel. And in that, he was Frank Blade. So you weren't that far off when you said John Blade at the start of this episode.
Frank Blade.
Which is silly. So that became an alias. That was retconned to be an alias. And then he was known as Eric Cross Brooks. And then later, Eric Brooks. But he was, Michael, introduced in 73, and the entire purpose of his introduction as a side character was to kind of ride the newly cresting wave of blaxploitation films led by none other than John Shaft.
He was John Shaft versus vampires, Ben. Let's be honest.
Yeah, so that was the aim of it, Michael. Certainly to kind of tap into that. And a lot of that was informing his character originally. He was created by Marv Wolfman, who's kind of a legendary writer for Marvel during that period. Tomb of Dracula being one of his biggest ones. He then went on to write the New Teen Titans for DC and Crisis on Infinite Earths for DC. He's pretty famous as a comic book writer these days. So then he created him with artist Gene Colan. And to give you a quote, Michael, Marv told me Blade was a black man. This is Gene Colan. And we talked about how he should dress and how he should look. Very heroic looking. That was my input. The bandolier of blades, that was Marv's idea. But I dressed him up. I put a leather jacket on him and so on. Colan based the character's features on a composite of black actors, including NFL star turned actor Jim Brown. He initially sported a 1970s style afro and wielded teak-bladed knives. Hence, Blade.
Yeah, that's the best bit, Benjamin. His knives, the blades, the eponymous blades were wooden blades because he used a wooden stake to kill vampires. So he had wooden knives. Genius.
Yeah. So, look, he was a good character. He was popular, but you could, Michael, level a criticism at that representation of the character as he was created by two white men who wrote comic books and drew comic books in the 1970s. Perhaps not the best source material for a strong black protagonist.
I think black people made Shaft. It's basically the same character.
So, look, there's an inevitable centering around blaxploitation in this, Michael. Blaxploitation is the wave of black-driven cinema from the 1970s that featured centering of the black experience in urban environments, and it gave us horror films, it gave us crime films, it gave us loads of really interesting films through the lens of American black culture. Yes, John Shaft. Exactly. So it's unavoidable, and I would imagine that Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan probably took a little bit of inspiration from those films, and it would be easy to see how you would get a Shaft character who said things like, "I don't like no jive vampires," and stuff like that. And that's its own thing. That's its own thing. But this, Michael, this
isn't he English?
Redraws that character. Huh? He's British, yeah, but he uses those phrases every once in a while, Michael. I'm almost certain it's on his first ever cover. Hang on. Tomb of Dracula number 10.
I don't like vampires.
Yeah, so he's supposed to be British. That's another important thing, I suppose, Michael. He's supposed to be British.
Look, this version is just Wesley Snipes. Just Wesley Snipes, Sniping about the place.
So this is so interesting, right? So there's a few... It has a troubled production history, this film, Michael.
As all comic book movies used to have.
As all comic book films used to have. It had a bit of trouble getting off the ground, Michael. So in the pre-production phase, there was an awful lot of stuff going on here. So New World Pictures originally had the rights to the Marvel Comics films, and they were going to make Mexico set Western starring Richard Roundtree as the vampire hunter. As Blade. Now, Richard Roundtree, Michael, is in fact
John Shaft.
You said it. Yes, he's John Shaft. He's John Shaft. So they were actually going to have John Shaft be Blade the Vampire Hunter, which is my favourite bit of trivia for this entire film.
But come here, weren't they also trying to make a bleeding Black Panther as well?
Yeah, so there was also an attempt by, I think it was Wesley Snipes himself, to get a Black Panther off the ground. So he wanted to make that. That fell through almost completely. So after failing to get a Black Panther film to production, in 1996, Wesley Snipes signed on to star as Blade. So he tried to do that. You'll see at the start, Michael, a production company called Amun-Ra.
Yes.
That's Wesley Snipes' production company.
Ammon bloody Ra, like in The Mummy.
Like in The Mummy. So that's his production company, Michael, and he put all this together and kind of, he really wanted to get involved. Now, I have heard conflicting things about this film's production because apparently Wezzers and the gang,
Yes.
they put a ton of effort into imbuing this, Michael, with some real heavy Shakespearean themes. And you do kind of get that.
Oh, yeah, his mother. She's there. Oh, spoilers, by the way. She's grand. Well, she's a vampire.
She's grand, but also wants to fuck her son. But we'll get into that as we go through. This is a very, very uncomfortable scene, Michael.
Wesley Snipes is very sexy, Ben. You have to bear that in mind.
You have to bear that in mind. And vampires have no morals.
Yeah.
But come here to me, Michael. Then I heard and I watched an interview where Wesley Snipes said, I turned up to set and I still didn't know how Blade was going to sound. And then I just opened my mouth and there he was. And I said, Wesley, he just sounds like you.
It's just Wesley Snipes, Benjamin. He's playing the character of Wesley Snipes. Because sometimes he's like, I've got this curse. I've got this curse inside me. And then he's like, yo, motherfucker's trying to run uphill. Like, what the fuck? Is this the same character?
It's pretty interesting, Michael. It's a pretty big juxtaposition of tones at times. But I mean, as I said, this was a huge moment for 90s vampires, Michael, because previous to that, the vampires that we've been getting on screen were either Hammer horror vampires in the style of Dracula, you know, your Christopher Lees, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yes.
Anne Rice's interview with the vampire had just made its way onto the cinematic screen with old Brad's Pitts and Thomas Cruise.
Sexy vampires.
Sexy, erotic, homoerotic vampiros.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bit of a mission statement from a few action directors in the 90s to kind of re-fang the vampire, if you will.
Yeah, let's make them baddies again. Let's make them cool baddies.
And so we saw a few bits of that in a couple of different films. We got From Dusk Till Dawn, written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Robert Rodriguez.
I like your word, From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn. And then we got the weird film Vampire in Brooklyn starring Eddie Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
And he's also a very threatening form of Dracula in that. But this kind of progressed that, Michael. And one of my favorite things, and you mentioned it already at the top of this, was the opening scene. One of my favorite bits of that, Michael, is where they get the human on the ground and they just start kicking the shit out of
They
him.
just start kicking him. They're kicking his head in. Like he's caused trouble at a real rave. Not like he's been brought as a victim to a vampire rave.
I kind of liked that, in that it showed the absolute contempt that vampires have for humans.
Yeah. Well, that and all the killing them and the plan to turn them all into blood bags.
Yeah, but they can kill them quick. But this was like a vicious act of, I'm going to kick the shit out of this weak little human bitch while he's on the ground. I'm going to give him a fucking hiding.
And it also set it up to introduce us to Blade Boots first, which is just an absolute classic scene.
And like there's some pretty phenomenal stuff going on here. So that sets up the whole thing, Michael. And I'm fairly certain that for the sequel to this, Guillermo del Toro takes on the sequel, which is a far superior movie, but we'll get into that another time, Michael. Probably on another episode. Oh, there's a cat coming through.
Oh, there's cats on everyone's desk today. Ben, you butchered Guillermo del Toro's name there nearly as much as you butchered whatever the other thing you just butchered was.
What did I say?
It wasn't Guillermo del Toro anyway.
No, right. Well, I'm sorry, Guillermo del Toro. I apologize.
Very good.
But come here to me. He definitely watched the first 5 minutes and said, right, that's enough. I'll make a sequel. That's all I need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've seen the good bit. That's really all I needed to see.
On I go. So I suppose that brings us into breaking down the plot to this film, Michael, because I took a lot of notes for this. Look at this, Michael.
Oh.
Look at those notes.
God damn it, Benji, but I have to say now, this is the first I'm hearing of a plot.
Yeah. Very good, Michael.
Very droll.
Very well played.
Yes, thank
Very droll. So, look, this is plot sparse.
Yeah, so vampires bite that woman, and Blade's like, "You shouldn't have got bitten. You'll have to figure out a cure or something yourself." And then she says, "I bloody did it." And then it turns out, coincidentally, Stephen Dorff wants to bring back the blood god, Umaga. And everyone else is like, "That doesn't sound like a great idea." And even the other vampires are like, "That's not a great idea." But there's a bit of there's a vampire caste system, Ben, which I no doubt had you leaping with joy at the notion of a caste system among the vampires.
Look at me licking my fingers, Michael.
Licking your fingers, licking the blood off your fingers.
That's what I did. That's what I did watching this film. So one of the interesting things for me, Michael, is how prophetic this would be for Donald Trump's rise to power politically.
Oh, here we go. All right.
Because you've got the old conservative order who are watching this brand new rambunctious fucking 2 sheets to the breeze. Fucking, I'm going to tear it all down, motherfuckers come in. And you're just like, whoa.
Stephen Dorff was so cool in the 90s. That petulant man-child character was just the 90s. Now, he just looks like a nebby little dweeb. And you're like, come on, get your act together, vampires. Don't let this guy boss you around.
My good lady friend, Michael, turned around to me. She watched it in passing while she was doing something else yesterday evening while I was taking notes for this podcast. And the second she saw that man's name pop up and his face pop up, she went, "Oh, look at the Dorfy little face on him." And I was like, yeah, that's nailed it. That's fucking spot on is what that is. Dorfy little Stephen Dorff. Look, Stephen Dorff is... Donald Logue was robbed in this film.
He's the real good baddie.
Donald Logue is the best. He's the best lump of muscle goes along with the main guy henchman I've seen in a long time, Michael, in a 90s film. He's a joy to watch. His comedic timing is pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
His hubris and be like, "I got these 2 hands, man. I got these 2. And they're gone again."
Yeah, great stuff. Now, you might accuse us of bias, Ben, because Donald Logue is a friend of the podcast. He's not a fan.
He's a friend of the podcast. But come here to me. So interesting was this, Michael, in terms of Stephen Dorff is just a dweeb. He's just a shite in this film.
Big old
and I don't get how... I mean, look, he was carrying that 90s charisma at the time, but it ain't worth chump change these days, baby, because it does not...
The petulant man baby child character, it hasn't aged well. He's neither threatening nor cool nor mysterious. Nothing about this works, basically.
A lot of the vampire main characters,
yes,
and I use that term lightly because calling them fleshed out characters in any form would be a bit of a mislead, but they're all, especially the Gen X vampires at the time.
Oh, here.
They're all shite.
Oh, here. What about the sexy blonde vampire lady?
She's awful. Mila Jovovich knockoff vampire is what my good lady friend called her.
Very good. It's very interesting because Tracy Lords was very famous when this came out. And
you'd never know.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the thing. Not only is it a glimpse or blink and you miss it appearance, she practically she gets killed off very quickly and very easily, to the point where I think I had to see this 3 or 4 times before I realised she gets killed in that scene. And it's funny because she's practically the first name on screen, so you think she, like, maybe it was the equivalent in the late 90s of doing the scream and killing off a named character early, so people were going, "Oh, they've killed off a famous person." Anything could happen in this film.
This isn't your dad's bloody vampire hunting.
No.
Tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty interesting. Like, yeah, Tracy Lords is just eliminated within 5 minutes of the film. Yeah. And it's, look, I'm not going to sit here and piss on Blade for the entire thing because there are parts of this film that I fucking love.
Yeah.
But we do have to take it as people love Blade now because of the time period it represents now. It's a weird time capsule of decisions made in the late 90s, and it did have a massive effect on vampires in terms of aesthetic. But, you know, plot, as you said, Michael, non-existent. It's MacGuffin after MacGuffin after MacGuffin after MacGuffin. I have my favorite scene in this, Michael, is when the MacGuffins kind of merge together. Two MacGuffins become one.
Yes, go on.
And it's towards the end of the film, Michael, when he's fighting Magadorf.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's what I call him, Michael. That's what I call him, Magadorf. And he has to knock down the ETAB. Is it the ETAB?
Yeah, the anticoagulant.
The anticoagulant holster that he has. It's stuck between two rocks, you see. And he has to knock it down. And he throws his spring-loaded samurai sword handle.
Yeah. The coolest thing in the film, next to Blade himself.
It wedges in the rock formation and springs. And I went, oh, the double MacGuff. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Chekhov was spinning in his grave, Benjamin. Not with disappointment, with excitement.
One of the jokes I have written down here, Michael, is Chekhov's spring-loaded samurai sword handle.
Yeah. And not like... Chekhov would be so excited because not only does it go off in the third act, it goes off in the first act, goes off in the second act, goes off in the third act, just keeps going off, just keeps paying off. That bloody thing pays off 4 times.
My favourite kind of throwaway character in this, Michael, has one scene, and it's the scene where we finally get to see Chekhov's handle blow off a vampire's hand. And his name is Chaz the Vampire.
Chaz the Vampire. Chaz the one-armed vampire. Best character.
And my favourite thing about it is every time Donald Logue's Quaid loses a hand, he suffers the appropriate response to losing a limb or an appendage.
Ow,
and
hurts.
he goes, ah! But Chaz the Vampire sits there and he goes,
Yeah.
He has the best fucking time.
Yeah, he has a
And I
great
remember
time.
watching this going, Chaz, have some self-respect, bud. Come on, these aren't your friends.
Yeah,
These aren't your friends, Chaz.
baddies,
This is
Chaz.
awful.
This is bullying, Chaz. This is workplace bullying.
This is workplace bullying, Chaz, and you shouldn't stand for it.
Yeah.
But look, come here to me. In terms of MacGuffinry, it's fucking everywhere, Michael. One of my least favourite things in this is sun cream.
Sun cream's great. It's the whole cure to vampirism.
So vampirism is not an issue at all, Michael.
No, if you have sun cream.
If you have sun cream, it's not an issue. So there's a scene in this film where Udo Kier's arch vampire, essentially
Dragonetti.
Yeah, essentially the European vampire stand-in, Michael.
Yeah.
He is executed by Dorf and the Gen X vampires. Right.
They are Gen X vampires. That is so disrespectful, Benjamin Colby.
They have no care for the old ways, Michael. Those fucks. But, Michael, they take him out, they execute him on the shoreline in a thing. And I liked it because, yes, they use sun cream so they don't start smoking early on as the sun is coming up.
Yeah.
And then they have to switch to heavy leather and bicycle helmets with UV protection assumedly built in.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, Jay.
What did you say?
I
That
said,
makes
all
sense.
right, Jay.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I can get on board with that. But then, Michael, not 2 minutes later, Stephen Dorff is standing in a park with a small Asian girl.
And
Not
just
a
a rake of
bother on
sun
him.
cream on.
He takes his sunglasses off, Michael. Are his eyes sunproof? What's going on?
He's like me, Benjamin. I refuse to wear sun cream because I hate the texture of it. And I'd rather get sunburnt than go to the beach on a sunny day. And I think that's actually the curse of vampirism in this universe. It's more just an inconvenience of vampirism.
Yeah.
Are you wearing your sun cream, Stephen Dorff? Is like, no, I don't like the greasy texture of it. And I don't like when the wind blows and the sand gets in it. And then you've got that kind of combination of grittiness and greasiness. So going to
No
stick
good.
to the night.
No good. But come here to me. Look, it's awful in terms of how it lets it down as a film. it just, because then they run around and they take care of Whistler, and I thought originally it was the familiars that were taking care of Whistler, and I was like, nice. The familiars have infiltrated the Whistler's factory. That makes perfect sense. But no, then Steven Dorff and bloody Mila Jovovich vampire are just running around and they're grand.
Yeah,
And I was
grand.
like, no,
They've got sun cream
this
on.
is
there.
horse shit.
Have you
This
not
is
been paying attention to the sun cream plot point?
But I think, I've been talking about MacGuffins a little bit. So magical sun cream is one MacGuffin. But my favourite MacGuffin comes in the form of an entire character known as Karen Jensen, hematologist.
Yeah, so much so that in future films she doesn't show up.
In future films, Michael, they just forget about her.
Yeah, forget about her. Forget about that whole cure thing. It's grand. Don't worry about it. It's more crack if he's not cured.
Yeah, more crack if nobody gets cured from that kind of thing, because then we wouldn't have much of a fucking movie.
Yeah. Or like vampirism.
Or like vampirism, we just get rid of that.
Yeah, just get rid of it with Karen's cure.
Now, in fairness...
Ben, sorry to cut across you, but one of my favourite thing about this is, speaking of Gen Z vampires, this is from a time when it was permitted, not only permitted, but perfectly acceptable to have your sexy female lead be called Karen.
Yeah.
Wouldn't get away with that
today,
in the
Michael.
year of our Lord 2024.
Would not happen today, Michael. Everyone would be slagging her for giving out about hemoglobin or
Yeah.
being bitten. Yeah. She's such an interesting character. So this is the character played by in Bushia Wright. I'm gonna have to guess again. Apologies to that actress if I butcher that name. But she's quite interesting, and had she been given anything more to do, she probably could have been a well-rounded character. But she does stand in as plot dressing a lot of the time.
Well, she's the... I don't think plot dressing is the right word. She's the audience surrogate character.
Yeah.
She's there
exactly.
to ask them, what's going on with vampires? And then they can tell her. But really, they're telling us. They're telling you, Benjamin Colopy, and me, Michael Leonard.
That's us. Speaking to us.
Yeah, and other people who don't understand vampire stuff, like my mam.
Oh, I thought it was just you and me.
No, my mam as well.
Oh, very good. Very good. Pamela's watching The Vampires too. But look, I could sit here all evening, Michael, and bash the Gen X vampires. But I think one of the things that this film does very, very well is the horror of vampires.
I love Gen X vampires. I love the bashing you're giving Gen X vampires. Take that, Gen X.
But one of the things it does really, really well is the horror of vampires, Michael. There are a few moments in this that are genuinely unpleasant to watch from a feeding point of view, from a death point of view, from Jesus, this would be a bit of a fucking nightmare point of view. One of those scenes happens very early on where Raver Toolbag number 1 gets trapped in the rave.
Yeah.
And he suddenly finds himself surrounded by these creatures who are just mocking him and going to eat him, essentially, Michael.
And kick the shit out
covered
of
in
him.
human blood. You know?
Fabulous.
Fabulous stuff. And there's another moment a little bit later on, Michael, where old Logster is cindered by young Franklin Blade.
Yes.
And my favorite bit about it is the cops walk into that scene. This is one of my favorite scenes in this movie. Is the cops walk in on that scene. There's a man lifted off the ground by 2 silver spikes, shaking, on fire, and they don't even bat an eyelid. Nobody goes, Jesus Christ! They just go, put him out.
Yeah, it was New York in the 90s, Ben.
It was gas. But anyway, the Logster, Michael, goes to the hospital as a charred corpse.
Yeah, good scene.
He's crispy. He's crispy. Great makeup, great scene. And Michael, fabulous scene. He surges forward and he devours Curtis, the Me Too morgue assistant.
Yeah, I mean, he was a character ahead of his time. Little did we know there would be 10 years when every main male character in films was this guy.
Yeah. He's just a sex pest. He's annoying. Like,
Absolutely
Karen
sex
draws a very clear line. She's like, I've been very emotionally open with you. I've been very clear in my communication. We are done. We're not happening again. Get over it. And he's like, I know, but do you ever think about us? And then wham! the Lokester is like, here, I'm not having this. No means no, chief. Nom 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 nom.
So Donald
And he
Love, in
eats
a
him.
way, is the real hero of this film.
My favorite bit about that, Michael, is later on, and compounding that idea of vampire horror. Later on, we meet Curtis, the Me Too morgue assistant, again.
Yeah.
But he's a gross, ugly, bugly zombie vampire, and he's just like,
Yeah, I'm
and
gonna
it's
eat you.
fucking fab.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, he's very on the nose. Looking back now, when that character, little did we know that character was going to become the de facto bad ex-boyfriend for female characters for the next 20 years. But
Yeah.
there's your template right there. There's where it all started. I don't know that for a fact. Ben,
Yes.
this, in many ways, is a martial arts film. That's the thing.
Yes.
Like, it's credited with being the first superhero movie, which it wasn't, let's be honest. And sure, the first successful movie based on a Marvel comic book, you could say. Having said that, very, very, very loosely based on a Marvel comic book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the good things I think about this, as compared to modern movies, is it's a martial arts movie starring a martial artist. Wesley Snipes was high kicking and high punching people long before Blade came along. And
yeah.
modern Marvel doesn't tend to do this. And it is my personal opinion, as a man of action, that you can tell that
You are a man of action, Michael.
as a man of action, Benjamin, and I'm willing to prove it, but as a man of action, I think you can tell that most of the kicking and punching in this is done by Wesley Snipes rather than by a rubberized CGI homunculus of a person.
Yeah. So I think that's absolutely true. There's no quick cuts, Michael. They linger on a shot for a while. They let everyone get a few, blows off. They make sure that it's a classic 90s action scene before the age of CGI and the supercut, where it was just cut. So it looks very fast, but doesn't actually deliver much in the way of impact. And I think that's a big shift that we saw with the advent of, or the invention of CGI, or the evolution of CGI, if you want, because there's CGI in this, Michael, but it's fucking awful.
It's not great. But also, some of the practical effects are fabulous. The vampires' heads swelling up and exploding when they get injected by the anticoagulant. Great stuff. Up there with Total Recall for head exploding action.
Yep. One of my... the most quintessentially 90s thing about this film, Michael, and directly leading on from your point there, Pearl, the data vampire,
Yeah.
is the most outrageous, grotesque, out of place, Pope in the Pool addition to this film that I've ever seen.
Very strange.
For some reason, there is an unexplained, morbidly obese, and I don't think even morbidly obese covers this, Michael, gargantuan vampire.
Yeah. Horrible stuff.
In the base. And it's never clearly defined, Michael. And one of the plot holes, look, this is a nice movie in that anywhere you throw a stake, you're going to hit a plot hole. But one of my favorite things is, initially, Udo Kier finds Stephen Dorff, the moody little whiny bitch baby, sitting in the data archives of the vampires with his music in, not paying attention to Udo, as he's like, this is a forbidden zone. Will you kind of get the fuck out? And he's like, shh. And he's finishing his tunes, and his little data algorithm is going in the background, and he's like, oh, you're so Gen X, Stephen.
Stephen, cop yourself on.
Stephen,
Come on.
You're so... Do you know what? I've never wanted to see a character slapped and humbled so much in my entire life. I could not fathom. Here's another plot hole, because we've just thrown a stake, Michael. Why the fuck does Stephen Dorff not get a big slap from the older vampires? Why is he allowed to run around with impunity?
Because, Benjamin, you don't realise the power of being cool and a bit moody had in the 90s. You don't understand the power of Gen Z. Gen X, sorry.
I think, Michael, and this is an interesting thing. So coming back to Pearl, circling back to the grotesque figure of Pearl, one of the interesting facts about this film, and facts is loosely based, but there is, or there was going to be, an attempt to introduce Pearl as a gay vampire for some reason.
Right, okay. I can see how, to use your modern language, Benjamin, I could see how you could accuse him of being gay-coded.
Yes, I think that's probably true. But there's also a scene between Udo Kier and Stephen Dorff where it's implied that Udo Kier won't hit him because he's kind of into him. There's a really weird, lingering, homoerotic kind of lip-bitey moment where it's like...
Did you not see when he's been all whingy? He's been all whingy and moany and mysterious.
Did Norrington want to make a very interview with the vampire style Blade? And we just didn't quite get that because we were like, nope, no gay vampires. We're bringing vampires back. We're not
bringing straight vampires back. The way they're supposed to be.
Fucking mission failed there. Yeah, we'll just have Blade get hit on by his mom. That's real straight. Real straight
so
stuff.
Straight.
So, like, anyway, Pearl is a bizarre 90s inclusion, but it was the kind of thing, Michael, that would crop up in those 90s movies where there'd suddenly be a bizarre character that is just the square piece to an otherwise round film. And you're just like, what the fuck are you doing here? What is this?
What? Are there other weird vampires? Or what? How did you get like this? You're more interesting than any of the other vampires.
I want a film with Pearl.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I want. There. And again, I think it's one of the aspects that Guillermo del Toro took into the second Blade film, because we get quite distinct vampires in Blade 2.
Yeah, much bigger bunch of weirdos.
Some of them are fucking weird.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more fun. But Pearl is arguably one of the most interesting vampires in this film. Now, as you said, gay-coded, offensively so to a certain degree. Like, very strange character, is there as the punching bag. And then there's one bizarre scene where they're torching him with the UV light. Again, a great use of practical effects, where they kind of have the suit in different degrees of burnage.
Yeah, very good.
But there's one scene where Karen Jensen just lets loose. And she's like, yeah.
And then he's like, he moved. Yeah, great.
This is the woman who not 25 minutes ago in the film was like, oh, don't hit that police officer. I know he's a familiar, but you can't just beat a man on a car hood, Blade.
He said, I'm a doctor. I'm
a doctor. Uncouth.
How very uncouth of everyone.
But look, ultimately, Michael, this film boils down to a bizarrely rushed ending. So we have Magadorf makes an appearance. We get some of the most 90s CGI I've ever seen.
Right, Benjamin. Look, we can't talk about this any further without talking about the extended director's cut and the original version of this.
Yeah.
So, the original version of this was based on earlier when Stephen Dorff says, he's a hurricane, he's a tornado of blood. Like, that was a metaphor, right? No, it wasn't. It was literal. The blood god is Stephen Dorff's blood turns into a hurricane of blood. And Wesley Snipes can't fight a hurricane of blood. And the audience were like, we want to see the two men having a sword fight with samurai swords.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
So they redid it with that.
Arguably, Michael, not the best move.
Look, it's better than Blood Tornado.
Anything's better than Blood Tornado, Michael. That could be the tagline for this podcast. We might change it from taking a pop of culture. Anything's better than the Blood Tornado. My favourite scene in that, Michael, is the inexplicable Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dwarf move that we get, where Stephen Dorff slow motion towards Blade, and I was like, yes.
So sexy. Benjamin, why does Blade say some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill? What has that got to do with anything that's just happened?
Apart from it being a fabulous analogy for the paradox of Sisyphus, Michael, pushing a boulder up a hill. I quite liked it. It was quite good. But this is one of the most interesting things about Wesley Snipes' Blade. Wesley Snipes' Blade is in a completely different film to everyone else. Not only in terms of tone, poise, skill level, lore-based being different by being the Daywalker. He's just doing different dialogue. He's off in his own world, Michael.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Like, there's the one scene where he breaks character and he turns around to the police officers who are shooting at him in the hospital and he says, "Are you motherfuckers crazy? No, motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?" And I was like, what is this? Where did that come from?
It's fabulous.
And I feel like a stuntman missed a shot or something and nearly hit Wesley Snipes. And Stephen Norrington said, "That's the most emotion I've seen from Wesley Snipes in this role. Fucking keep that in.
Put it in.
You know, there's a few of those. Like, my favorite one is there's worse things out here than vampires tonight. Like what? Like me." And he slots it in and I was like, Blade, you're a vampire.
I thought you were.
You are a vampire.
I thought you were the goodie as well. I thought. Have I misunderstood this relationship?
But I was like, why are you threatening the woman that you've taken along? Like, what are you doing?
But I said, yeah, I thought you were helping her. You fucking weirdo.
So, like, I mean, there's so many interesting choices in this film, and the stoic Blade is there. It's fun. It's enjoyable. This, again, Michael, is better as an artifact of its time than it is as its own movie. Like, it's fun to see a bizarrely out of place Weslington Snipes. Like, that's fun.
Benjamin, I was 16 when this came out, and this was it. This was it. This was the film. Long leather trench sales went through the roof, Benjamin, as if they weren't already on the rise, but they went through the roof. Everyone was in long. Now I was in a wool trench because who had money for a leather trench in the 90s, Ben?
Not us.
Not fucking us. The Celtic Tiger was just a glint in our eye at that stage. But yeah, this was it for films in the 90s.
So, I mean, yeah, this was hugely culturally impactful, Michael, and left a massive legacy, including kicking off, as I said already, the arguably superior, mainly because this was what it came from. It's superior by merit of it being slightly better than this. But Blade 2 came from that, and then we got the absolute dead cat bounce that was Blade Trinity. That was fucking weird. But, like, very interesting stuff, Michael. Would go on to shape a whole bunch of narratives, including the bizarre association between Buddhist practices and black hunters or assassins of some kind. So there's a few scenes in this film, Michael, that are never really fleshed out, right? There's the investigation by Karen Jensen into Whistler and Blade's lair, and she finds a peace lily in a shrine.
Yes.
Surrounded by a series of Buddhist paraphernalia.
No.
And books on controlling the beast within. She also finds Blade's samurai blade.
Oh, yeah.
Resting under a sheath, right? Now, that's fine. That's fine. But later on, Michael, when Whistler passes away, really through no fault of his own, Michael. Oh,
or does
I forgot my favourite scene.
Or does he, Ben?
I got my favourite scene in this, Michael. There's the bit where Whistler is gasping for breath, and Wesley Snipes has a tiny little wet wipe, and he's just patting Whistler's neck.
You'd be grand. You'd be grand. I've got a little wet wipe here.
He does it for 5 minutes.
I've got a little swab. You'll be grand.
But, Michael, he does it on the same patch because I guarantee you somebody turned around to him and said, "We don't have the budget to keep doing his makeup, so don't fuck it up.
Don't
we have
rub
to
his makeup
refilm
off."
the entire end sequence because the focus group told us that a blood tornado isn't cool."
Yeah, you bastard. Benjamin, go back to Buddhism. What are you saying about Buddhism?
Sorry. Yeah, so he has this, and then we don't see it again. There's never a mention of it. Blade doesn't talk about his inspirations from Buddhism. He doesn't, like, there's nothing like that. But Whistler dies, and he goes into his Peace Lily shrine, and he rips it out of the ground and slices it in half to show that, no, now I'm going to let loose. To which I said, Wesley, Blade, at no point in this film have you held back even once. At no point in this film have you even considered sparing a vampire. The only person that you did it for is Karen Jensen, because she looks a bit like your ma.
A little bit like your mum. Yeah.
Touch like your ma. And apparently you're into that. And so is your ma. So it's fine. Sort of.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
Anyway, look. Good film. Go give it a watch.
Go give it a watch. Go on. Give it a roll.
It's not a good film. But At the same
A
time,
good film.
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Hey, Benjamin, you've been blood drowning in bloodsuckers this week, though.
Yeah. I have, Michael. I
Go on.
have. Michael, I have finished AMC's Interview with the Vampire Series 2, or Part 2, depending on what
Now,
way you look at it.
I remember hearing that this was being made, but I don't know how we managed to not talk about Series 1 on this podcast. Because this is a weekly pop culture podcast.
It is. It is.
Did we forget?
Now, I think we might have just forgot, or we didn't feel it was in our wheelhouse. But it is these days, Michael, because every second episode we do is about vampires.
Yeah,
So,
we're just a
you know,
vampire standcast now.
We're doing a Buffy bloody quintessential in a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. But come here to me. I have watched season 2 of Interview with the Vampire, which is loosely adapted from Anne Rice's homoerotic sensation, Interview with the Vampire.
Delicious.
And there's some interesting stuff coming out of that. So it's a pretty interesting series. One of the big jumps that it makes, Michael, I read an article this week that complained that it's not a faithful enough adaptation of Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. To which I say, good. You probably wouldn't want that today. Anne Rice was very into erotic fiction.
Yeah, she's writing sex stuff.
And Michael, that's not to say that there's no erotic fiction in this, because fuck me, vampires are getting it on, man. There's like,
Are they vampires?
oh, Michael, everyone's in love with someone of the same sex. It's fabulous.
Oh, are they? How
Yeah.
modern.
So one of the nice things that they do is they drag the timeline forward a little bit, and instead of being set in Louisiana in the early 1800s and then Paris in the late 1800s and stuff, it's set in Paris just after World War II. And the central focus of season 2 is when Louis Dupont-du-Lac, played by Brad Pitt famously originally, and played by Jacob, I'm going to get this wrong.
Lordy?
No, that fella from Game of Thrones, Worm.
Grey Worm?
Yep, it's him.
I've forgotten that actor's real name.
I've also forgotten that actor's real name. Bad luck. Jacob Anderson, Michael.
Oh, great name.
Yeah, so Jacob Anderson is there. He's got his young vampire sister / daughter, Claudia, famously played by Kirsten Dunst in The Thing. In this one, recast, Michael, to be played by Delaney Hales.
I imagine that the person would be recast considering Kirsten Dunst is in her 40s.
Yes, recast in season 2 from the actress who played her in season 1.
Ah, I see. Okay. That makes more sense then.
Yeah.
But
But anyway, look, it's pretty good, right? One of the things that this does fabulously well, Michael, is it really gives menace to vampires.
oh, that's what you just said about Blade.
Yeah, but it does it in a really cool way in this one. Vampires, generally speaking, have a whole host of classic abilities: reading the mind, flying, starting fires with their minds,
Turning
fog,
into mist.
rapid speed, all that jazz. It's all there. But only certain vampires get it and other vampires don't. It's like being talented at something. The famous line given, I think, in one of the vampire, I can't remember which vampire film it is, but it was in True Blood. Eric Northman once said, Michael, can all humans sing? And they were like, no. And it's like, that's why all vampires can't fly. Only certain vampires can do it.
Very
And I was
good.
like, very interesting. But anyway, it's a little bit like that. Anyway, what's interesting about this is, Michael, this is set after the fallout of season 1. Season 1, spoiler alert here, ladies and gentlemen. Lestat, the vampire Lestat, who is essentially the main character of the Anne Rice vampire novels, he is murdered by Louis to be freed from his yoke, because in season 1 their relationship is portrayed as incredibly toxic. He's very domineering. He's played by Australian Sam Reid, and Michael, fuck me, hubba, what a man.
Oh, he's a very sexy fellow,
Michael.
Benjamin. He plays
Jesus Christ.
he plays the vampire who's also a French surgeon, doesn't he?
He's not a surgeon.
Is he not? Does he not say, I need 30 mils of blood, Lestat? Does he not? Does he not say that?
I just walked into that, Michael.
Yeah, you
well
did.
played.
Yeah, you did.
Well,
yeah.
I just strutted myself.
Hook,
on
line,
in
and
there.
sinker into it, Benjamin.
Oh, Michael, what a fool. But no, here, come here to me.
What?
One of the things, and the only reason I wanted to talk about it was, Michael, one of the things this does fabulously well is it picks up where they left off. The central premise of Interview with the Vampire is Daniel Malloy, the interviewer, originally played by Christian Slater back in the 70s movie. They did their
70s?
interview. They did it in the 70s. 90s movie. But they did their interview in this world in the 70s.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
he is hired back to do it. And he finds the vampire Armand and Louis are in a relationship.
Oh.
And as the season progresses, he begins to pull at the threads of this relationship, and he finds that not only has he been manipulated, Daniel Malloy, by the vampire Armand, but Louis has been manipulated by him as well. And what that kicks off, Michael, is one of the most fabulous, lengthy, drawn-out uses of the unreliable narrator I have ever seen.
I'll give you 5 minutes to tell us.
So, throughout this is all done through the framing device of Daniel Malloy doing an interview with both vampires, Armand and Louis. And it is fabulous. Daniel Malloy is a renowned investigative journalist, and he does not trust Armand at all. He doesn't trust Louis either, but he doesn't like Armand because of something in their past, which I won't spoil because it'll kind of give stuff away. But, Michael, what happens then is, through a series of flashbacks, which are fabulously done, it's some of the best period piece work I've ever seen. And the cinematography is just stunning. But anyway, we are fed a series of narratives around the relationship between Armand and Louis.
Okay.
And throughout all of this, Lestat is framed as this huge, big, bad villain. Now, he's a bad egg, but he may not be the big, bad villain that we've come to expect. And as the season progresses, Michael, we slowly start to see gaps in Louis' telling of the story.
Oh.
And Daniel picks up on these and begins to pull them. And it's built slowly to deliver one of the best season finales I have ever seen, Michael, where Daniel Malloy has all the questions that he's been storing up over the course of a season, and he just begins to unleash them. And the way it's done is so perfect, because as a viewer, your brain was picking up on inconsistencies, and you were thinking to yourself, oh, maybe it's just, they rushed it in the budget scene. They just missed it. They didn't have a continuity coach on the sideline going,
Very
it's
good.
not that. It's not that at all. There's holes in the narrative, and Daniel Malloy starts to flick them at Louis and Armand, and he starts to tear their relationship apart at a table. And Michael, it's fabulous, because every time he does it, your brain as the viewer goes, oh, fuck, yeah. Oh, Jesus. Oh, fuck.
It's couples therapy, the gay vampire sex drama.
Oh, Michael, sign me up for 14 more seasons. Give it to me. Hook it to my veins.
Very good. Benjamin, you won't have time to watch 14 more seasons of that, though, because there's lots of trailers for new stuff.
There's loads of stuff coming out, Michael. Loads of it.
I can't see the running order
coming
anymore.
out, Michael. Yeah, no, Y2K's coming out, Michael.
Y2K, Benjamin. The latest film in the kind of ongoing genre we seem to have got somehow. Ongoing genre we've ended up with of late 90s, early 2000s throwback horror films.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is interesting. So this is from A24, and one of the fun things you can do is type in Y2K A24, and it feels like you're putting a barcode into your search engine, but you're not. In this particular case, Michael, it's directed by Kyle Mooney. Do you know who Kyle Mooney is, Michael?
No, you tell me.
Kyle Mooney rose to prominence as an internet skit comedian.
Oh.
Back in the day, and then he was hired by SNL with Beck Bennett.
Okay.
You'd know them to see them because they pop up as character actors in loads of stuff. Anyway, this is his directorial debut, and he's doing a classic 90s coming-of-age film with an apocalyptic horror background.
Yeah, we've seen things like this before, and we've seen Y2K horrors before, and we've even seen this kind of young teen comedy horror. This is going to sound mean. This is going to sound mean and cruel, but this film really has one major thing going against it, and it's that the internet hates Rachel Zegler.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is going to sound mean, but it's also quite accurate.
Yeah.
Quite accurate, unfortunately. Rachel Zegler is not having a great time.
No, it feels like this is not going to get a fair shake. It's got a cast that isn't beloved.
So, I mean, there's some interesting stuff going on here. Julian Dennison is in this, Michael. Julian Dennison, who we last saw in Deadpool 2, I think, of all things, ages ago.
And Hunt for...
Yeah, but he's grown up, and it's gas. It's just weird to see kids when they grow up in movies.
That happens now most of the time.
Yeah, unavoidably, unless there's some horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
But, hopefully not. But one of the things I enjoy about this, Michael, and not to bash it completely, look, we have seen it before. It's absolutely stock standard. But one of the things I quite enjoy about this is that it's wholeheartedly embracing the janky tech aesthetic of the 90s.
Go on, because for me, this is just what things look like. Everything just seems normal.
Yeah, this is just your life.
Yeah, this is just,
Yeah.
It's what
But
my life still looks like.
There's a few things that I really, really enjoy about this, Michael. And I'm just going to show you one example of it here.
Go on.
This is the poster for it. I'm just going to show that to you there, Michael.
Yes.
And that is the most classic John Carpenter style 90s hand-drawn poster with a techie, edgy, digi feel that I've ever seen. I'm all for it. I like it. I like it. I'm all for it. But one of the other things I really enjoy about it, Michael, is the weird cobbled together aesthetic of the sentient singularity that's trying to hunt people down.
It has a little bit of a vibe of when the Allspark was activated in the Transformers and vending machines were coming to get you and remote control cars and disposal machines and stuff were all coming to get you.
Do you know what it put me in direct mind of, Michael, was Small Soldiers from 1998.
Oh, very good.
Remember Small Soldiers?
I do. I remember.
Tommy Lee Jones as Chip Hazard.
Yeah.
And Kirsten Dunst. She was in
Young
that too.
Kirsten Dunst, not current Kirsten Dunst, obviously.
Not current Kirsten Dunst. That would involve time travel. We don't have
recasting.
time for that on this week's episode. We'll probably have to do a good old-fashioned bloody Exhumed on Small Soldiers at some point. But it has that janky aesthetic and it looks kind of fun. Probably won't watch it, Michael, because I don't enjoy coming-of-age comedies.
Had a big kiss in the end. Don't care.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, off Rachel
Yeah.
Zegler. The internet's
Yeah.
most hated person.
But from things that we're not all that are seeing, Michael, to things that are kind of exciting, maybe?
Right, what are we talking about? The War of the Rohirrim.
No, Secret Levels.
Oh, Secret Levels! Oh my god, we're running so late, Ben. We're about an hour and 20 in here. So Secret
Yeah,
Levels
not great.
is... Yeah, we're flipping miles behind. Secret Levels is the new show from... Look, Benjamin! Anything that I was just about to say, I don't care. It's got fucking Space Marines in it. It's got a Space Marine episode. Don't care about anything else. All that other bullshit that you're going to make me say. I don't care. It's got Space Marines. It's doing Space Marines, Ben. They're going to be on... They're going to be on real TV, Space Marines. You don't have to subscribe to Warhammer Plus to get this. You can just get it on TV on Space Marines.
So, it's pretty... I have never seen such a deluge of reaction to a single trailer. I haven't seen something like that in quite a while, Michael. But what we got this week from Amazon was from the creators of Love, Death and Robots is their brand new animation-based anthology series, Secret Levels. But this, Michael, is going a little step further. It's a little bit like Captain Laserhawk from Netflix, where they got their hands on a property and they just spun all the characters out into their own bizarre animated world. But in this case, it's very, very similar, but we're getting a series of anthology stories based on your favorite video game properties. One of which, Michael, you've just hit the nail on the head, Warhammer 40k. We're going to get some Space Marines from the writers of Love, Death and Robots. And Michael, that's fucking amazing news.
Great stuff. Great stuff. The best thing that's happened in Warhammer animation since that Astartes fan project a few years ago. I wonder if that guy is somehow involved. I hope that he is.
I hope that he is. I'd like to see that, Michael. Dungeons and Dragons is also featured. Another very us-adjacent thing.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? There's all sorts of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. There's going to be Warhammers, Benjamin, on the Amazon.
Michael, there's a couple of other big games that are there. We caught a glimpse of Kratos from the God of War franchise.
Warhammer.
But he's one of many PlayStation characters that are going to get look in this. Michael, we also got characters from The Outer Worlds, which is a very popular survival space game. Sifu got a glimpse, Michael, the very interesting Kung Fu game where each time you die, you come back as an older version of yourself.
Benjamin, is it not called The Outer Wilds?
Nope, The Outer Worlds.
A different game. Oh, so
Yes, it is. Unreal Tournament, Michael, is getting a shout. We haven't had an Unreal Tournament game since 2015, apparently.
Yeah. Famously heavy on plot.
Famously heavy on plot. Love a good plot. Honor of Kings, Michael, is getting a shout out. Look, I could list games at you all day, but if there's one thing we can say about this, Michael, is Love, Death and Robots has a phenomenal track record.
Yeah, and
Phenomenal.
there's Space Marines in it.
And there's Space Marines in it. Sure, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much going to be it from us because, as Michael pointed out, this is going on for fucking ages.
Yeah, the War of the Rohirrim got a trailer as well. It looked kind of interesting. It's anime-inspired prehistory of the Lord of the Rings universe. Looks all right. The trailer is desperate to remind you that Peter Jackson's involved.
But is he, Michael? Is he?
Is he?
Is he?
He seems to be more involved than anyone than he was with the War of the Rings.
The War of the Rings. That's what it's called, and that's what it is in this podcast from now on. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe we'll talk about it next week when we talk about fairy smut.
Excuse me?
Bizarre erotic fiction and hibernophobia in Book Talk's darling, The Court of Thorn and Roses. That's
Oh
what we're
my
talking about
God, I
next week.
understand every word that you've just said, but that sentence makes no sense whatsoever. I'm on tenterhooks!
Yeah, I spent too much time on TikTok, ladies and gentlemen. But ladies and gentlemen, if you've somehow stuck around this long into this episode, it must mean you really like us.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. It's very kind of you. Do you know what you could do to show your appreciation for all the hard work and shite we talk? Go on and give us a like and a review wherever you are. Give us a review. Share us with your pals. Shout us out on social media. React to us like the Secret Levels trailer this week. Just, show us a little love. There's a few ways you can do that. You can find us on the interwebs at www.seomrabeag.com, seomrabeag.com.
It means tiny room in Irish in a roundabout way.
In a roundabout way that we don't really use anymore. You can also find us on the other interwebs because we've got another website, www.sherlocksherlistenpodcast.acast.com.
Yeah, much better, much more up to date. We should probably just
Much more
stop
up to
talking
date.
about that other one. It's a good name, though, you see. That's the problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can't stand listening to us in long form, we've got lots of short form content up on the likes of Instagram at Sherlock Listen Podcast.
Yeah, give it an L look on Instagram.
Give it an L look. You can also find your short form content.
Ben,
Yes.
but I'm not a Gen Xer, Benjamin. I'm not on Instagram. I prefer my short form content even shorter. Where could I find
Yes,
that?
Michael, if you prefer it even shorter than my attention span on any given day, you can find it up there on the TikTokies, our fastest growing social media platform. We're so Gen Z, Michael. We're like Stephen Dorff in the 90s.
We're a skibbity. Skibbity like there is. Ben.
That has cemented us as real carriers of the culture. You can find it all linked below, ladies and gentlemen, in the description. But if you'd like to abuse us live with possibly a response, go join us in the Discord. It's absolutely free. Give us your opinions. Vote on topics for Exhumed. Vote on the next film we'll cover on this podcast. Vote for the next quintessential episode that we're going to do. And keep up to date with the latest news and goss.
Very exciting. See you next week for Talk About Fairy Smut.
Pretty good.
Goodbye.